Beija Velez, and I will be your host this evening. I'm here on behalf of Foot Locker, Adidas, and Greenhouse. We're going to be having a discussion about social responsibility in fashion and retail. If you ended up bringing, was anybody here that ended up bringing a pair of shoes to donate by any chance? Anybody? Anybody? Yay, yay, thank you so much. So yeah, over here is the Adidas and Parlay booth. If you ended up donating a pair of shoes, we're recycling those, and we greatly appreciate you. You're gonna have the potential chance to win a pair of the new Adidas Run, such a long name, the Adidas Parlay Run for D 1.0s. And if you didn't donate a pair of shoes, you can cop those shoes this Friday on footlocker.com. Is anyone familiar with what Greenhouse is? Anybody in the room? No? Awesome, so let me tell you. Okay, of course you all know. So yeah, for those of you that don't know, Greenhouse is a new innovation hub and creator incubator that is focusing on those at the forefront of culture. I really appreciate the eye contact. Y'all are so present right now. So if you haven't, you can go ahead and download the app if you want any of the latest updates on their product drops and any news on their new initiatives like O-1. And now we're gonna introduce some of our amazing panelists. Is that me? Oh, sorry. We're gonna introduce some of our amazing panelists. First up, we have Ryan Lee. He is co-founder of Rooted NYC, and their mission is to reconnect people to nature, one houseplant at a time. So let's give him a warm welcome. Love your shoes. You can go wherever you want, yeah. We're having a party. Next up, we have Nicole McLaughlin. Did I say that right? Perfect. She is an amazing designer, y'all, to say the least. I admire her work so much. If you haven't already seen her on Instagram, I'm pretty sure you'll be following her after this panel. She's repurposing items and turning them into bespoke design. So let's welcome her to the stage as well. Ow! I'm just a hot mess. What was that? The water? Oh, man. And last but not least, we're going to be hearing from creative director, designer, and co-founder of fashion label Public School, Dao. Dao's the man. And he's also going to be talking about his new initiative, O-1, that is aiming to take the hype of streetwear culture and mobilize it towards activism and societal change. So let's give him a warm welcome as well. Ow. Got a good turnout. How are y'all feeling today?
Yeah, good.
Good. I obviously didn't get the color palette. I'm over here looking like a bag of Skittles. But yeah, so Dao, tell us a little bit about O-1 and what drove you to do this partnership with Greenhouse.
Yeah, so O-1 is essentially just an extension, a continuation of what we were doing at Public School, which is my brand, along with my partner Maxwell. And essentially it's really working on product with brands, different brands, different designers, and creating them in a really socially responsible manner, right? And so for instance, the Parlay for Ocean 40 runs, the upper is made from recycled plastics that are pulled from the oceans. So really sort of highlighting and celebrating high energy product, and being able to activate around it by incentivizing consumers to do something good in order to get to the product, right? And so kind of flipping the model of a purely transactional experience between brands and consumers where you're paying money for the product, you get the product, and you sort of just part ways. The vision for O-1 is to really influence consumer behavior and have people be able to do something with their time. If you waited 4 hours online to cop a pair of kicks, or you were like online digitally for however long trying to win to buy a pair of sneakers, it's sort of unlocking that time that you would have spent in line for product, and taking that time and putting that into something good in order to get to the product. And so the idea is that you're building value back into the sneakers or the gear that you're buying, and it means a little bit something different to you as opposed to just spending your money and getting it back. So that's O-1. Amazing.
I feel like that cyclical process is very vital, especially in today's age. So if you all aren't familiar with Dao, he, if I'm not mistaken, used to do creative direction for P. Diddy, Sean John brand,
Yep.
and also artistic direction for DKNY.
Yep.
Resume is lit, to say the least. But how has being in those spaces and, you know, having these brands and companies calling you to bring your creative mindset, I mean, you've been in the game for a minute. How has that shifted your heart to want to be more environmentally conscious?
Yeah, I mean, it's exactly that. Sort of just having been in this industry for a very long time and worked on a lot of product, you know, you get to the point where, you know, it was a long process for me and probably a shorter process for people like Nicole, who are younger and entering into the space now, that, you know, you get to the point where you realize it's just like endless product. And, you know, there aren't sort of infinite resources that we have here on Earth, and but the cycle of fashion and product feels sort of endless, right? That you have more and more product, and, you know, went from 2 seasons to 4 seasons to, you know, brands and designers feeling that like they have to ship every single month and create something every single month, new on top of new on top of new, that you get to a point where you sort of really realize, like, wow, you know, like there's a consequence and a big impact that I'm contributing to, you know, from a fashion standpoint. And yeah, you know, I'm a father first, and thinking about sort of the world that I'm leaving my children with. It gets you to the point where you're like, okay, so I've seen this part of the business and I've seen this part of the industry. You know, I have this awareness. I'm educated about sort of what's happening with man-made climate change and the impact that fashion specifically has on it. And so, yeah, I couldn't sort of keep going on and doing the same thing. So it's taking that experience and taking, you know, those years and years of working in a certain way, and being, you know, and now trying to flip it on its head. And, you know, the newer generation of designers, I think, already are coming into it because they, you know, they're the first generation to really have to live with climate change and the effects of climate change in a real way, where they have to, you know, it impacts their lifestyles. For me, you know, it's still on the periphery, but yeah, I mean, if you're a new designer coming into the business and you're not thinking about how to design and create and manufacture responsibly, like, don't even get into the business, you know? So that's sort of how my journey has landed me to the point where I'm here.
Amazing. Are anyone in the crowd familiar with Nicole's work? Anyone? I'm like, don't be shy. Got some fans up in here. So Nicole, I've probably seen your Instagram. Obviously, funneling, it's so hard to incorporate everyone at once. We're gonna get some love with Ryan too. So I've seen Nicole, you're probably Instagram at the time, you probably had like 5,000 followers. Now you've garnered an amazing following with like 200,000+ followers. If you all haven't seen her work, she's taking like Wilson tennis bags and turning them into pants, or shoe scraps and making suitcases. It's amazing, to say the least. Did you ever think that when you were transitioning into this market with using repurposed items that you would have so many eyes on what you're doing right now?
Definitely not. I'm Nicole. Hi. Yeah, I mean, it was kind of an interesting journey for me getting into this, because I don't come from a product background. I didn't study it in school. No fashion or footwear knowledge, but I was a graphic designer and I was working at a large company right out of college, and I was just exposed to the world of fashion and how much product was being made and how much product will just sit there after you've made it. And while I was just sitting in giant piles of shoes and clothes, I decided to just kind of pick some stuff up and would cut it up and see what happened. And I had literally no experience, was just like hot gluing stuff, like taping stuff, stapling garments. And then I started to see things that I had never seen before. And I did this by going to thrift stores because it was cheap, not because I was trying to save the planet. But I think it was only like, I guess, a month in, and I had done like a whole bunch of projects with like sporting equipments and old jackets and things that I was finding just like that had a hole in it, and I felt less guilty about cutting it up. And then I was like, you know what? I think this is upcycling. I think this is considered sustainable. And I mean, now I look at it and like, I don't see it any other way. Like, I would never change the way that I do that. And like, there is so much material to work with. So I definitely didn't start off with the mindset, but now that I'm here, like, the future is bright in terms of using used materials for base of projects.
I think that's crazy that you said that. I honestly thought that you came in this with wanting to be more globally conscious. So I feel like, if anything, that's inspiration for all of us to see how we can experiment with things and be more environmentally aware. Do you feel like your page now is a mood board for people not to only be an aspiring designer, but also to be more earth conscious in their work?
Yeah, for sure. And I like that my example is like, I'm not coming from like a background where I'm like, I'm trying to change the world and like make everything like fully sustainable. That wasn't the goal, but it just shows you that you can do things in your life that sometimes you don't even realize what you're doing is making a good step forward. And I think something about my pieces that I find to be interesting is people look at it first for the design of the product. And like, I think that is what grabs your attention first and foremost, is the way the product looks and how it fits and just the overall feeling. And then the second layer is that it's made ethically. And I think that's kind of where we have gone wrong a little bit lately in terms of like brands capitalizing on a fashion moment where it's like you can build a sustainable story and get people like, oh, paying attention. But like, if the design isn't right and you're just doing it to like get clout, it's not good. So you need to still design with the intention that it's product, like people want to buy it, and it should be sustainable. Like, it just should be.
I'm curious, all of you, I would like for you to answer this question. We're obviously seeing a lot of brands and companies transition under this umbrella term of sustainability. Personally, I feel like a lot of people are transitioning into that because it's trendy or it's profitable, but they're not actually doing the due diligence to be earth conscious. So what do you all specifically think about that term, the word sustainable?
Oversaturated.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't think it really means much, to be honest. There's many ways you can be sustainable. I'm Ryan, by the way. Started a plant company. I feel like a ugly duckling up here with them because I'm like, yo, y'all. First of all, y'all look hype. Like, you guys look good, and I'm like, I just care about plants. But my co-founder Kay and I, we started the company like a little over a year ago, with the sole mission just to reconnect our generation with the outdoors. Like, I grew up in California, like always just in the Sierra Nevada wilderness. I was backpacking, surfing, climbing, just like being immersed in nature. And he had a similar experience too, and when we both moved here, we were a little depressed because everything was like blue screen, your phone, your computer, and we were like, something's off here, right? Like, if you think about any place you actually like spending time in and making connections in, there's gonna be plants in there. You may not notice it, but there are. And so it's kind of like this sleeper category that no one pays attention to or cares about, but it's like a massive $50 billion industry, and it's like mad antiquated. It's like the people running these growers and greenhouses are like 50 to 75 years old, and so there's not a lot of like new young blood. And so that's what we're doing. Our whole thesis is, look, if we get you to care about a plant or nature, and you will, because plants are dope, you'll eventually just have a stronger connection with the world and want to treat it better. And we think that's like the psychological Trojan horse into getting our generation to care about environmentalism, about what they can do in their personal lives that is more, to that word, sustainable. But to answer your question, like, I think there's other parts of it, like, okay, you can either make a decision to upcycle, or you could make a decision to like take your plastic bags and drop it off at Home Depot because there are certain bags you can't recycle. Like, I think there's a lot of parts that go into leading a sustainable life. So I don't really like using the blanket term. I like to
Gotcha.
speak to like pointed things you can do.
So you live here in New York, correct?
Yeah, I'm in Brooklyn.
I live in downtown Los Angeles, and I don't know if you've ever been there, but it's literally like the zombie apocalypse, and I can't wait to move. But
Right by Skid Row.
oh my God, it's like 5 blocks over, but we'll talk about that afterwards. Obviously, we are living in these cities that are heavily populated. And do you feel like there's a disconnect as a whole with nature in cities like New York and LA? And what do you feel like people, as a whole and as a community, what we can do to shift so that we can be more environmentally savvy?
Yeah, for sure. I don't think it's that we're all disconnected. I think there's just too much other stuff in these big cities to pay attention to. Like, you got events like this. You got that hot Bumble or Tinder date or whatever the kids are using these days. You got fashion shows. You got everything. And so a lot of people don't think about, okay, let me take a time out and get outside and just like go for a walk outside. That from a mental wellness perspective is so nice, to just like not have anything to think about, to like walk amongst nature. Like, I'm sure you guys have felt that at any point in your life. And so I think it's just like a time management thing here. And sorry, the second part of that question was,
I think it was having communities. What can we do to transition to be
right,
more environmentally
like what can you
savvy?
do in your daily
Yes.
lives? And I think, so I just learned this like not too long ago, like maybe a few years ago, but there's like 7 different types of plastic codes. And like, those bags you get from Whole Foods, you put your lettuce in, or like you go to the bodega, get your bacon, egg, and cheese, and it comes in that white, like flimsy plastic. That's a type 4. And you actually can't recycle that in New York.
Wow.
Right? So like, a lot of people, they think about recycling. They're like, okay, there's that blue bin. It's plastic, so I'm just dropping it in there. But those recycling facilities actually aren't set up to take in that kind of product. It gets stuck in their systems. And so they end up just putting it in the trash. And that stuff doesn't degrade over time. It's not biodegradable. And so what you should and need to do is you got to keep that at home, right? You amass like some of it, you put it in a tote, and you go to Home Depot, you go to Lowe's, you go to Kohl's, you go to JCPenney, you go to really any big like grocer or home improvement store, and they'll recycle it for you in a proper way. So like, that's just an example of a very small thing that you need to be made aware of to do. But that's pretty simple, right? Like, you get your groceries and you just wash it out and you just leave it on the side, and then when you get enough, you take it to a store.
I'm learning. I'm learning so much from him right now. Like, I'm like, when you dropping your book? Cause I'm buying. Wow, that's crazy. Like, you really just schooled me. I'm curious as to what you all in your daily lives, big or small, the actions that you all are taking to contribute to the work to the earth, and making sure that you're being more globally conscious.
I can go on that one. I mean, I think doing this work, I think we can all kind of speak for that. It's like, the more you learn, the more facts you learn, the more that you're preaching it, you change your life. Like, my life has not been the same this past year. I've completely changed the way that I buy things, the clothes that I wear, just everything in my life has changed for the better. And I mean, I think I'm definitely on myself a little bit more. I catch myself being like, do I need to get this item? Or like, if I'm gonna stand in a cafe and have a cup of water that they give you in a plastic cup, like, was it worth really that one single-use plastic that you just used for 5 seconds and then threw out? So I think I just like catch myself slowing down a little bit before I act upon things. And I mean, I guess that's kind of like a very general way of putting it, but if you're ordering something from Uber Eats, like, that's a person in a car that has to drive. They give you a thing that has plastic forks and knives that you don't even use, and then it's in a plastic bag, in a plastic container that you eat and then throw away. Just like, not put a damper on
Completely
it,
wasteful.
but it's super wasteful, and that's kind of like the life that we're living. And like, you guys have the opportunity of living in a city where you have a train system that is pretty good, and not a lot of places have that. So things like that you can take advantage of. I mean, instead of driving and emitting more pollutants into the world. So there's little things that you can do in your life to change, and that starts kind of there.
Yeah, great. What do you think, Dow? Big or small?
I mean, same. I think that there are probably a lot of things that, like Nicole is saying, that you can catch yourself doing. You know, whether it's like reducing the amount of red meat that you eat, like that has a huge impact. You know, to Ryan's point about proper recycling, to even, you know, a lot of people are like, I'm not doing that. I'm not taking a piece of paper and going to Home Depot, and like just avoid it in general. Like, you know, like avoid plastic, period, so that you don't even have to think about recycling, right? The stats on recycling plastic are like less than 20% of the plastics that we do put properly into recycle bins gets actually recycled. You know, so the goal there is like just avoid recycling. You know, carry a water bottle. We collaborated with Clean Canteen for water bottles, so if you don't have one, you can pick one up here. But that in and of itself sort of saves you from having to even think about recycling. So they're big, you know, big moments. Like Nicole said, it's super easy to get educated, and that's probably the lowest hanging fruit into wanting to, you know, reduce kind of a wasteful lifestyle, is just get educated on it. You know, like go online and be able to see kind of like the 4 or 5 big things. You know, agriculture, travel, plastic usage, and even stuff that you probably learned growing up or heard your mom say, you know, turn the light off when you leave the room. Like that actually really has an impact of like home electricity and electricity usage. So they're like, you know, 4 sort of big key things that people can affect. And I think a lot of people in general think like, how much can I really do to like impact? But, you know, like, so if everyone thinks like that way, then no one does anything. But if you start to do it, and, you know, like we're all here because maybe we like sneakers or whatever, like that's a community, right? And so whatever community that you have, whether it's, even if it's just your own household, if it's just your family, like if you guys are having that conversation and learning to, you know, like really take those little easy steps, like then that is a step forward, right? And so, so everyone can make an impact and play a part. No one should feel like I'm not, you know, like I can't really make an impact. Like everyone needs to feel like that they do and can have impact on sort of what's happening, you know, on Earth.
I feel like definitely if we all just do our own due diligence to make a difference in the in the world, it's just gonna have a domino effect. And I think that's the beauty in it. It definitely is. You know, the younger generations are definitely going to suffer from global warming and climate change. I know Republicans don't think that's a real thing, but the world is literally burning up, so it's a very real conversation. And Ryan, talking about global warming and climate change, can you school us on why you think that the connection with nature is so vital? What's funny?
No, I'm in no position to school anybody.
No, I mean, we all were just completely baffled about the whole cold plastic thing. But what do you feel like, why do you feel like it's vital that we have this connection to nature, especially in the time period that we're in now with global warming and climate change?
I mean, there's 2 ways to do it, right? One, we stop emitting so much carbon, meaning we stop doing a lot of things like producing fashion, like driving cars. That's a macro level change though. Like you need billions of people to all coordinate and do that at once. That's possible. And again, like Dao said, you gotta believe that you can make that change, and you gotta put action behind it to make it happen. But the other option also is to plant more trees and more plants, right? Like their one job is to sequester carbon. And so, yeah, you need also billions of trees to make any real impact. But again, it all starts somewhere. Like, it sounds cheesy, but a good friend of mine, like a long time ago, told me, look, if you want to change the world, you got to believe that you can first. And I laughed, but I was like, For sure. Like, it comes from the micro actions. It comes from doing at a little by little, day by day, changing micro habits to make it a thing. And so I think it's important right now, and I think, you know, the generation even below me, they hate being called Gen Z, but, you know, that's what they are. They care a lot about social impact, about who is building these companies and these brands that they're buying from, and what are they doing in their whole supply chain or operation or process to make sure that the products that are coming to market are more environmentally friendly, or they're making the best effort to reduce their carbon footprint. So like Rooted as a brand, if you shop from us online and you buy a plant online, you get a chance at checkout to check a simple box that says offset my order for add a carbon offset to my order, and it's like 27 cents. Huh. And as an end consumer, they don't care, but in aggregate with thousands of customers, then we get to make a real dent in a local problem, and that adds up. And so I think it's just top of mind for everyone, right? Like this winter, like when was the last time we had a blizzard or a snow day where we didn't have to go to work? That didn't happen once, and it's February. That's crazy. When I first got here, like 8 years ago, every day I was like, I'm not going outside. I can't. I was a California boy. I was like, I can't do that. It's like -2, and it's just warm now. And you can tell over time that the climate is changing. That is a definition of global warming and that whole category. And so, you know, this shit is happening. People are noticing, and people are caring about it. So you got to put your money where your mouth is if you want to do something about it.
I can't believe you called yourself the ugly duckling. I really appreciate everything that you're saying right now. I'm like, bro, what? Killing it. So with you talking about the planet warming up, as we all know, we've probably seen on the news or social media with the Australia bushfires that just seem surreal, to say the least. We feel like we're so distant from it, and we feel like we're not affected by it, but we all are. And coming on the heels of that, there were a lot of brands that were creating exclusive product to tackle and contribute the proceeds to those that were affected. But the downside of that is that these brands are contributing to the problem of global warming with mass production. So what do you all feel, I would like to pick your mind on all of you all, in regards to fashion brands focusing on activism, but also having that balance of being socially responsible?
Yeah, that was kind of a bummer to see that, to be honest. It's such a double-edged sword, because you want to help and you want to contribute, and it's great that these brands are like, yeah, I'm going to contribute all my proceeds or half my proceeds towards this cause. And I mean, that's great, and it's awesome to be a part of that. But if what you're doing is a part of the problem, you need to stop and recognize, like, okay, this isn't helping. Is there a different way that we can do this? And I mean, there's so many layers to it, because it's, even if you buy something that is sustainable from a brand, it's still getting shipped to you. There's still packaging. There's still a ton of other stuff and layers in that. So you need to kind of just re-look at how you do those types of things. And if you're a brand, or if you're starting a brand, like you said, do it the right way. Do your research about what you can do in terms of making it ethical, and the materials and recycled stuff. It starts slow, but you can do your research and figure out like what brands and what blanks for t-shirts or whatever. Maybe Gildan is not the answer, but you know, so yeah, that's
not Gildan.
Yeah.
Not Gildan. What do you think about that, Dao?
Yeah, I mean, those things to me aren't mutually exclusive. I think, you know, we live in a world where companies are driven by growth. You know, we're here at Foot Locker where, you know, it's like public companies are driven by growth. If you're not growing, you know, the idea is that you're stagnant and sort of the brand dies. So they can't be mutually exclusive. The genie can't be put back into the bottle. You know, like the way that we live and sort of, you know, capitalism in general is, you know, it's here. It's like you can't sort of reverse that. And so, bottom line, you know, any new brands that we talk about now that are coming into the space just need to operate in a certain way. You know, older brands who have supply chains and huge models that are built around a wasteful or non sort of socially responsible model, have to slowly be able to sort of untangle from that, right? And that's it's a tricky road. But it doesn't have to be mutually exclusive. Like you don't have to be a big brand and feel like, oh, well, like I'm just this big brand and I can't do anything good, or I can't try and do something good, because that sort of defeats the purpose. When you talk to people in this space and that are experts in the space, it's like no one brand, no one designer, no one person can just do it by themselves. It has to be a collective effort, right? And so while it seems like there's conflicting sort of processes happening, like with the donation of proceeds to certain causes, that you have to be able to work through it. Like we can't sort of sit here and judge, people for trying to do the right thing, right? Because then that sort of just stops any sort of progress. Not to say that there aren't sort of really, big culprits and companies who are really sort of abusing the world, like in a really harmful way, and they feel like they have no sort of obligation to change. Certainly there are companies out there, but it has to go hand in hand. Like we can't sort of move forward without bigger brands knowing that I have to look at what I'm doing in a way, to unwind what I've been doing, and head down the proper path. So it is tricky, it's tough. So a lot of it's not about just making more green products. It's like that's not the solution, right? So for bigger companies who think like, oh, cool, like let me jump in the space, I'll contribute by, 10% of the products that we make will just be, responsibly made. Like that isn't the solution, right? Mm-hmm. The solution is like changing the consumer behavior, changing how people think about consumption, how they're relating to your product, kind of creating a circular economy where the raw materials that you're using for product are taken from older materials, and any new product you're making is built from something that you've made in the past, and then that product can sort of enter back into the cycle and exit. It never exits, right? It just keeps going and going, and you are using the stuff that you're creating to create new stuff, but you're not introducing, how we talk about a virgin materials. You're not milling new product fabrics. You're not creating new polyesters, but you're trying to build off of stuff that already exists, right? So that's the end goal, to have, companies be on this sort of circular model. Yeah, but it's going to take time. It's not going to happen overnight, for sure.
A lot of time. This is amazing. You hit some very key points, and I want to tie it into something that Ryan said about for us to tackle this with it being a global problem. It's we're going to have to do it as it would have to be a macro movement. Before we wrap this up, I want you to answer this. All of you ought to answer this question. Obviously, the eco-friendly sentiment isn't widespread across major fashion brands and companies. And what can we as consumers do to push these companies and these brands to be more globally conscious?
Push them with how you spend your money. Like spend money only on products that you and brands that you believe are doing the right thing, and doing the right thing doesn't mean like 100% of the time I'm, like doing the right thing is like, here's my plan. By, 2030, we're going to cut emissions by 30%, like that's the path. And so, you guys, we all hold the power, right? By through your wallet, like spending money on brands and products that you believe in, but also you yourself, like Nicole led with, like, think about what you're consuming. Think about, like, new isn't always better, right? Like, there are finite sort of resources that like the earth is a living thing. All living things, have a lifespan, right? And they can give so much, and they only have finite resources. So think about the choices that you're making as a consumer, because you really hold the product. You hold the power for these brands. And if everyone is, putting their dollar where their mouth is, the brands are paying attention for sure, 100%. And so that's I think really what you can do is like think about what you're consuming, everything that you are spending money on, everything that you are bringing into your house, everything that you are putting on your person. Think about the impact of those things and how it affects the world and the earth. And we'll all be on the path together.
So much work to be done.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, we gotta get to work. Is there,
We gotta go now.
Right now.
I'm out.
Is there anything that you all wanted to say to piggyback off Dao? I mean, he pretty much hit everything, but is there anything that you have to say, Nicole or Ryan?
Yeah, I mean, it's up to us. We can put the pressure on these brands in a lot of different ways. I mean, think about our current generation. We have the ability to be able to DM with brands. Like, chances are you can live chat with a brand. And, like, who knows? Like, share your thoughts around it. Share your thoughts. You have a platform, and that's something that, like, generations before you didn't have. Like, everyone here has their own platform to be able to share their message and what you stand for and what you don't. So use that wisely. And I always just like to tell everyone to take a look in your closet before you go out seeking something new, because chances are you can fill that void with what you already have.
Yeah, great.
Yeah, I mean, I think going off of what Dao said, like putting money behind the brands you trust and believe in, I think you'll realize effectively will reduce your consumption generally. Like, you really don't need to buy that many things. And, it's all part of the system, right? Like, brands will target you on Instagram to get you to buy something because they know you will, and Instagram is incentivized to make sure you see that so that they get the dollars from the brands. And so it's this kind of like vicious cycle of the more you spend, the more the money's getting distributed to further this capitalistic mentality. And like, I'm a capitalist. Like, I own a business. I know what that is, but it could have a responsible limit. So I think that's one. Definitely put your money behind the brands, but also I think the more you can like make being environmentally conscious part of your value system is really important, because just like anything else, like respect, right? Like if respect is part of your value system and you see someone disrespecting a stranger, you would speak up against that. And so it's the same thing. If being environmentally conscious is part of your value system, then if a brand does something shady or isn't truthful about something you're buying, it's just going to irk you, and you're going to ask a question. You're going to be like, well, who are you donating to? Or like, how much are you donating? Or like, wait, what is this made of? And that will spark conversation, and other people watching you say things like that will spark conversation. And so I think it's less of a, for me at least, it's less of a how do you do it? And it's more of like a personal value that you got to work at, which is harder, I think. But I think that's the easiest way to make a change for a long time. Because I'm going to have that value now and in 10 years and in 30 years.
Yes. Ripple effect.
Ideally, yeah.
Yeah. You all have had some amazing key points. I wish we had more time, because I'm pretty sure we could stay up here forever and talk some more. But one last thing, what do you all want everyone in this room to walk away with today? And because that was like, wait, what? What you mean?
World peace.
Well, in regards to being more environmentally aware, and what can everyone in this room, small or big, what transitions can we make in our own personal lifestyles where we can start seeing this ripple effect and us being more globally conscious?
Yeah, I mean, I think we touched on a lot of those things. I think getting educated is sort of the easiest thing, right? There are people, if you're wherever you're getting your information from, if it's online, on the gram, like that there are so many sort of voices out there who are leading in a way around education and information on how to live more responsibly and how to sort of be more socially conscious. So I think that if you care, like, you gotta care, you guys showed up here, right? So, like, something, I don't know, even if it was like just to be around a whole bunch of sneakers, like, something got you here, right? And that same amount of energy that got you here, or the same amount of energy that you spend on finding out about new sneaker drops or trying to get a cop a pair of sneakers, like, if you took a tenth of that energy and put it towards educating yourself around like our impact on the earth, you will be able to find so many things to be able to incorporate into your own lifestyle. I mean, we have some basic tips up here, but again, education, I think, is the lowest hanging fruit for people to take away. And yeah, I mean, just like, if you love your mother, which we all should, the big, everybody's mother is our planet. Not to sound extra crunchy, but that's really what it is. Like, if you would protect your own mom, which you all should, you should be protecting the biggest mother of all, and educate yourself. And then once you have that education, spread it out. Each one teach one to your community, to your household. Start small, and then it gets bigger from there.
Great. Is there anything that you all or wanted the audience to leave with before we wrap up? Go ahead.
I mean, I just thought of this really stupid thing you could do. Like, you could
Buy
open
more
your
plants.
Instagram. You know that type feature where you put on a black background or whatever. You can literally just type, like, "Is that plastic?" or something else like that. Save it. Make it your home screen background, not your lock screen, because you'll look weird as shit when you get a notification and people are like, what's that? So do it, once it recognizes your Face ID and unlocks your phone. And that's just a reminder, no matter what you're doing then, right? Like, then the next time you go to Bodega to get that bacon, egg, and cheese, and they put it in a plastic bag, you'll be like, I could carry that in one hand. Like, I don't need that. I could put the napkins in my pocket and I can, like, get out of here.
Have full grease going down your hands.
Yeah, exactly.
Great.
Exactly.
So
Just
fun.
like all that grease. Right?
Not a stupid idea.
And I don't know, like,
That was good.
yeah, like, that's a bad example. I mean, if you want to do it. That could be cool. But it's really like, how do you set yourself up for success, and like put those little reminders so that you are always thinking about it, because it might get annoying and it might be stupid at first, but after a day, after 2 days, it might just become part of your mental, right? Then, like, you order the next thing on Uber Eats, and it comes in a bag, in a bigger bag, and you're like, that was dumb. It was 5 minutes down the street. I could have just called my mom, eaten something there without the plastic goods, and then walked back.
So
So
wasteful.
exactly. And so, I don't know, however it is with your lives, like, just make that little micro action that will remind you to think about it. And that's all you need to do. Like, it's not that hard. Not asking much.
Make it seem so simple. Because it is, though. The micro actions is definitely going to have a bigger change. Anything else that you want to say, Nicole?
Just slow down and look around you. I mean, that's kind of what changed my mind, and I think it could help change yours. Once you kind of see the trees and see what you have in front of you, you'd be less likely to mess it all up.
That was a great way to wrap it up. Before we close, guys, is there anyone in the crowd that wants to ask the panelists any questions?
Hi, I was thinking that maybe this is like about sustainability and fashion, because you guys are fashion designers, and so except you, but I was wondering what would make the most impact with sustainability and fashion. Would it be like the materials that we're wearing? Would it be the packaging? What would make the most impact? And I would say, as a consumer, it's easier to to go back the products that make sense if it's practical. For instance, like water bottles, that's easy, because I mean, it's going to save me money from buying water bottles, like bottles of water, when I just use the bottle.
Yeah.
But if it comes to like fashion, for instance, if it's like materials that don't hang well on my body, if it doesn't look good, or if it's very expensive, then I would probably not be encouraged to buy it. So I was wondering, what's a practical, what are some practical,
Well, for fashion specifically, there's a huge now kind of like secondhand model, right? You have stores like the Real, where they're essentially, buying older pieces from people's personal collections and then reselling them, right? And so I think that that's a very practical way. Is like, you don't have to buy new product that was maybe created with virgin materials, that's maybe made poorly, that'll probably break down very quickly. There are models now where you can buy secondhand, and secondhand doesn't have to be like extra smelly and dirty, and like that. There are models now set up where you Rent the Runway, just all these sort of bigger businesses that have grown from this idea of this sharing culture. Like, I don't need to get something new. There's everything that I could ever want, whether it was a jacket or a dress or a purse or a pair of shoes. That's a very practical way to go down the road, right? But you have to get out of the mentality of like, I just need something new in order to feel like, fresh or pretty or, whatever.
Yeah.
So
I can confirm that thrifting definitely gives you that same high when you are shopping, because if you find that one thing that you're looking for, you're like, it's a come up. And to that point too, that will influence bigger brands as well, because us all shopping secondhand, there's less to buy from these bigger corporations, so they're gonna have to rethink what they're doing. So you're inadvertently putting the pressure on them to kind of step it up and make that change as well. There's so much material. I'll just completely preach that until it's over-preached, but there's so much material and there's so many resources to buy secondhand. And and thrifting is not a dirty word anymore. It used to be seen as like kind of gross and like not in today's day and age, and thankfully not for the generations to come. I mean, this is the life that they're living. They have all this stuff, so they're gonna take advantage of it. So you guys should too.
That's awesome. Ryan, are you wanting to say anything? Good. Let's get one more question.
Thank you for all the info you shared, and commend you all for the work that you're doing. My question to you all is there any political aspirations? Because a lot of the talk has been to brands and consumers, but a lot of the change happens on the government level. So is there any political aspirations for any of the individuals here to create change and for the lobbying?
You gonna help me run the campaign or what?
Are you gonna fund the campaign?
I mean, truthfully, no. Like, I don't think I could do it. I think it takes a specific personality to do that and to win at it. And I don't think that's me, straight up.
I don't know, man. You might have
You got some facts.
like-
you got some knowledge.
Yeah,
to
but like
drop.
facts are facts. Like, you go Wikipedia, but to win a political campaign. But to your point, politics is where the change happens, right? And so, but you, in my personal opinion, you don't have to be so, what is that called, on one end of the spectrum about it. Like, it doesn't have to be like a climate change denier or like a stop using all plastic products right now and like change the system. That's not how change works, right? It's always a gradual progression. But that said, like, I have my interests, Nicole has hers, Dao has his, and we're trying to do the best that we can in each of our respective fields to make a difference in what we're doing, right? Like, there's that parallel alignment of like, okay, we care about this and this is what we're doing, so let's merge those two things. Yeah.
I think also with that is the education aspect of it, because maybe some of these people that hold a position of power don't know about this stuff. So it's on them to be educated, but us as consumers, us as just good Samaritans, to be able to educate these people on like, this is what we've figured out, here's the information, instead of companies or people finding something out and keeping it to themselves, being able to share it, and hopefully the people that are in place to make the decisions know what's going on.
And in general, just to try and impact legislation isn't sort of like, the barriers aren't the same as they used to be. If we learned anything from this past election cycle and last 3 years, that you can organize within your own community. You don't have to be, a congressman or, a cabinet member. Like, you as a regular voting citizen have the power to organize and impact legislation on a big level, right? And so you don't necessarily have to run for office in order to impact legislation. So it's the same spirit, right? It's the same idea of like, you can be the change that you want. Sounds corny, but that's really what it is.
If
know?
you run, we'll support you.
Yeah.
I won't fund you. I'll support you, though.
Well, amazing questions. You all wish we could continue this energy a little longer. I'm pretty sure we all today have walked away with some amazing wisdom. I know I have. Ozichi? Y'all see somebody I went to high school with. My bad, y'all. That's crazy.
What's up, Ozichi?
I just put you on the spot. But yeah, like, amazing wisdom, you all. I really appreciate just you all taking the time out of your busy schedules to school us on some things like plastic codes. But if you all haven't already, you can get some complimentary sneaker cleaning over here at Sneaker Lab. And also, if you all want to chop it up with them afterwards and get their information and Instagram so you can stay up to date with all of the work that they're locking in on, don't be afraid to come and ask a few questions. I appreciate you all and sharing
Thank you.
this
Thank you.
space
you.
with you all. And yeah, let's give them a round of applause.
Thank you guys for coming.